Hello, welcome to Region Weather Live, your YouTube source for weather across the Dakotas and Minnesota. I'm meteorologist Brad Warner. We're tracking a storm system that's going to be moving across our region here Saturday night into Sunday, bringing some snow, some rain, and some freezing rain. And then as that kind of moves on out on the backside of that, we're going to be tracking some winds going into Monday. So let's go on and take a look. And so we're starting off the weekend quite pleasant, obviously, with temperatures here Saturday afternoon running into around 40 in the north to quite a few 50s, actually, to even 61, 62 degrees down in Spearfish, South Dakota. And that's all thanks to this upper level ridge here, allowing plenty of warm air northward into our region. And that's just giving us all kinds of pleasant temperatures, pretty clear skies. We're getting rid of some of the clouds down in southeastern parts of Minnesota here Saturday afternoon, so they could even warm up a little bit more. But if you look off to the west, we have this trough sitting out here, and that's going to be what we're going to be tracking going into Saturday night and in through Sunday as that moves eastward. And then obviously, as I said before, as we get kind of into Monday on the back side of this system, we're going to be concerned with some of the winds associated with this system. And as you can see, just stepping through here, Saturday night and into early Sunday morning, we've got a mix of rain and snow and sleet and freezing rain going through the day on Sunday. And then as that low pressure continues to move eastward, that snow begins to move northward. But then on the back side of this, we've got continued snow showers, some colder air sinking back in. So areas across central and western part of the Dakotas will eventually get snow, but it's looking more like Sunday night into Monday morning. And then, of course, as I said here, those isobars get quite close to each other once we get into Monday. And so that means strong northerly winds, unfortunately, on the backside of this. And of course, along with that, with those northerly winds, once that system moves out, we have a high pressure system that begins to move in on Tuesday and Wednesday, and that's going to allow all kinds of colder air to sink into our region. And so here we're going to take a little closer look. Now, again, as I always say, this is just one model's rendition. I'm going with the European model on this one. We'll see how everything pans out, but for the most part, they're fairly close to each other with some minor discrepancies here and there. But just to give you an idea what we might be talking about for timing here, this is a Saturday night, very early Sunday morning, right around 3 to 4 a.m. And you can see that mix of rain and snow across north central, northwestern parts of North Dakota, perhaps some sleet or some freezing rain in with that as well. Then as we get to 7 a.m., that rain begins to move into the Red River Valley and into far northwestern parts of Minnesota. Now, one thing to kind of take into consideration on this, that while we don't always see the moisture out ahead of this, keep in mind, we do have the possibility at least of some freezing drizzle, and that doesn't show up on the models very well. So kind of keep a little bow out ahead of this main area precipitation and just kind of keep that in mind as we get into the early parts of Sunday morning, that there is that possibility of some drizzle or some freezing drizzle, at least just depends on what your temperatures are as we get to that part of the morning. That's going to be the very hard part to determine that rain and freezing rain line. And then, of course, as we go along here around 9 a.m. and as we get to about noon, again, we got rain and a very thin line of freezing rain or sleet, and then it quickly transitions over to snow. So how exactly that line that delineates between the rain, the freezing rain, and the snow shifts north or south is obviously going to play a big impact as to who exactly is going to get the snow, the rain, and the freezing rain out of all this. But right now, this is kind of what we're looking at. We're looking at this snow moving in as we get into the early parts of Sunday afternoon. And the other thing to keep in mind is as this moisture kind of runs into this colder air, a lot of times right where that transition happens is where the heaviest amount of snowfall occurs a lot of the time. So where you have this borderline, boy, you go from rain to moderate snow quickly, and so you're going to be going from no snow to a lot of snow in just a short amount of time as we travel across the northern parts of Minnesota. So a very, very tricky forecast as we go into Sunday. Now, as we get into Sunday evening around 7 p.m., that snow begins to lift northward. More of it turns into snow. We're not really dealing with as much of the rain and freezing rain. It looks like as we get into the evening hours, things cool off, temperatures cool off. So we're looking at more snow once we get into the evening hours. But again, plenty of snow across northern parts of Minnesota already as we get into Sunday evening, Sunday night around 9 p.m. and then midnight, that snow continues to move northward. But on the backside of this, we have snow now begins to slide southward on the backside. This model painting the possibility of still some rain or some freezing rain going into the overnight hours Sunday night, early Monday morning. Not real confident in that, but I guess just kind of keep that in mind. We still have at least a little possibility going into the overnight hours once again Sunday night, early Monday morning. And then as we get to about 7 a.m., that snow continues to slide southward. Nothing really major out of this backside of this system, just an inch or two, maybe 3 at the most with some of the snowfall that's occurring on the back edge of it. But the problem becomes, as it does snow and the winds pick up, especially across the eastern half of North Dakota, probably northeastern South Dakota, northwest Minnesota, kind of as we saw last week Wednesday when we had those strong winds. Wasn't a lot of snow on the ground, but it did blow around. But boy, once we got just a little bit of snowfall that moved through and mixed in with it, those visibilities went right down. So it's going to be a little tricky for Monday between the winds and some of that snowfall that's going to be occurring through the day on Monday. Then as we continue on, that system finally moves on out Monday night, and we're left with just a little bit of light flurries going into Tuesday. Now, looking at those possible wind gusts for Monday, this is in the morning. This is around noontime on Monday. So you could see 35, maybe 40, perhaps 45 miles per hour. I think could be pushing it, but I definitely think 40 miles per hour, occasionally a wind gust of 40 miles per hour up in this region that I'm kind of concerned about is definitely a possibility here and there. So for those of you that are going to be getting some of that snowfall, definitely looking at some blowing and drifting across this region. And then obviously the stronger winds a little bit further south, but obviously they've also have less snowfall. They're not going to be getting as much on the backside of this, so not as concerned as we go further to the south and west of this system. But still, they're going to be dealing with a little bit of wind, or a fair amount of wind. I shouldn't say a little bit. They're still going to be dealing with some wind on Monday, just not the reduced visibilities. All right, where are we really concerned about that freezing rain and sleet and all that icing potential here is basically in that northeastern parts of North Dakota, northwest Minnesota, stretching down through Fargo, Bemidji, Brainerd, down just north of the Twin Cities. I think it'll stay north, perhaps kind of in between the Twin Cities and Duluth area here. So through the Lakes country, that's kind of where I'm mostly concerned about seeing that freezing rain and sleet, especially through Sunday morning. Now that snowfall potential, now this accumulation is just kind of concerned with Saturday night through Sunday. So we're looking at a trace to 2 inches here from just north of Minot to Fargo, to just kind of in between the Twin Cities and Duluth. And then we're looking at 2 to 5 inches here north of Duluth, kind of following that Highway 2 corridor almost up through Grand Forks and up in through Rolla and up kind of in near Botno-ish area. And then as we get even further north from there, we're looking at a possibility of 5 to 8 inches across the far northern parts of Minnesota. Now, again, depends where that freezing line develops here is where we're going to be concerned about this snow line shifting north or southward. So that's why I've kind of got this area circled here. This is the greatest uncertainty just because we don't know if that line shifts just even a little bit further north, like areas like Fargo or Devil's Lake might not see hardly any snow out of this. If that line moves just a little bit further south, then we're looking at areas like Wahpeton, moving over to Jamestown, Valley City, probably still north of the Twin Cities, but still some of you areas getting snow that you're not previously expecting at this moment. And not to mention that will probably also slide some of this heavier snow a little bit further south. So areas like Fargo and Grand Forks and Bemidji could pick up a little bit more snow if that line shifts a little bit. And then on the back end of that system, as we go into Sunday night and Monday, we're looking at a trace to maybe tops 2 inches in a lot of these areas across the remainder of our region. And wouldn't you know it, as I'm recording this forecast, the National Weather Service, coordinating between Grand Forks and Bismarck and Duluth, have issued winter weather advisories across the northern parts of North Dakota, eastern North Dakota, and much of northern parts of Minnesota here. This is in effect through Sunday at this point. I would expect there'll be more coming in for Monday just because of the winds. We'll see what kind of advisories, watches, warnings we get as this time moves along, just depending on how much freezing rain and snow we get out of this whole deal. But for now, this is what we're looking at, are some winter weather advisories. Now, beyond that, once that system moves through, kind of through the week, we're left with just a little bit of flurries on Tuesday, and then that high pressure system slides on in, perhaps a little bit of snow across far southwestern parts of South Dakota. But otherwise, we're going to be looking at some clear skies, but definitely some cold temperatures as we go into Wednesday and Thursday. But it looks like perhaps once we get into Friday and then Saturday, we get a little bit of return of some south winds and allow those temperatures to warm up just a bit. Not quite like what we're seeing here on Saturday, where we're looking at 40s, but at least we should be back into the 20s to some 30s. And the other good thing is it doesn't look like, at least for the time being, that there's any big storms on the horizon. So let's take a look at those high temperatures through the week here on Sunday. Now, again, we're going to be dealing with perhaps some freezing rain, but that doesn't mean that some of these areas could warm up still to get above freezing, even though it might be snowing a little bit. We'll see how this actually pans out, depending on how much snow falls, what really occurs out of this system. So some of these areas up here might struggle to get above freezing, but nevertheless, it'll be close. And then as you get further to the south, we're still looking at 40s to 50s across a good chunk of our area. Now, for Monday, the National Weather Service information isn't showing up, so I'll give you an idea of what one of the models is showing. We're looking at below freezing across the far, far northern areas of our region. But then as you get south, we're still looking at perhaps the low 30s to maybe mid 30s. And then as you get a little bit further south, in the low 40s. But by Tuesday, that cold air really begins to sink in more as that high pressure really begins to settle in. So we're only looking at high temperatures in the north in the teens to 20s across southern parts of Minnesota. The southwestern parts of South Dakota, where we're looking in the mid to upper 30s possibly. And then here we go, folks. Wednesday morning, starting off really, really cold here, where we're going to be looking at 10 to 15 below zero across the far north, single digits to teens across the far south. That's the low temperatures, the morning lows for Wednesday morning. So that means, of course, those high temperatures really aren't going to rebound that much, perhaps even struggling to get above freezing across the far north. Plenty of single digits up here. Teens here in the southern parts of Minnesota, southeast, South Dakota. And then we get into the 30s and we start to get a little hint of a rebound there going on Wednesday. And here you can see Thursday, that freezing line shifts just a little bit further north, but we're still dealing with single digits to teens across the far northern parts of Minnesota. And then by Friday, that freezing line, at least on the east end, moves just a little bit further north. We're looking at high temperatures pretty much in the 20s across the north to 30s and 40s across the south. All right, everybody. So a little bit to think about, especially across northern parts of North Dakota and Minnesota as you go through the day on Sunday, where those roads could be fairly slippery between the freezing rain and sleet. And then you've got that snow that's also possible where you've got some heavy stuff at times. So reducing visibilities. And then we're concerned about Monday because we still have some snow and some stronger winds along with this system as it begins to pull out. So keep all that in mind over the next couple of days. Enjoy today because it's going to turn for Sunday and Monday and then get colder as we get a little bit into the week. All right, everybody, for Region Weather Live, I'm meteorologist Brad Warner, and everybody have a good day.